Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Heidi Manheimer, Chairwoman of the Cancer and Careers Board. Cancer and Careers will celebrate its 20th anniversary in 2021. Our mission, a once groundbreaking concept, is to help people continue their work lives after a cancer diagnosis. We're also committed to the larger discussion about health and the workplace, so that people and companies can find new ways to successfully navigate both. The future of working well speaks to the moment we're all experiencing, a time where our health needs on a global scale intersect every aspect of everyday life, including business and employment. As a national authority, Cancer and Careers is in a unique position to talk about it, and we've brought together a powerful group of thought leaders from the worlds of sports, finance, wellness, and beauty to lend their voices to the conversation. Today's event is free and open to all, thanks to the generosity of our sponsors. It is my privilege to recognize them. Pfizer Oncology, P&G Beauty, HSN, Caplo, QVC, AMC Networks, L'Oreal Paris, Robertet, Shiseido Americas, Tweezerman, Women's Wear Daily, Beauty Inc., and our presenting sponsor, Condé Nast. Condé Nast has been a long-term sponsor and supporter of Cancer and Careers. They champion our work and they invest in the work lives of the survivors we serve. When we came to Condé Nast with the early concept for today's event, they not only signed on immediately as presenting sponsor, but they were excited about hearing what might be possible in the years to come. Condé Nast's iconic brands in print, video, digital, and social bring big ideas to life. They entertain, empower, and lead, which brings us to today. Leading our panel discussion today is Samantha Barry, Editor-in-Chief of Glamour. Sam is known for featuring original reporting and unique perspectives across financial, wellness, and political topics. Prior to joining Glamour, she served as executive producer for social and emerging media at CNN Worldwide, where she led the network to become the most followed news organization in the world. Please welcome Sam Barry.
Thank you so much, Heidi. And it's my pleasure to be here and part of the future of working well. As Heidi laid out, this group have brought together some of the best people in the best industries to talk about what we learned this year in 2020, and maybe also have a little bit of a look ahead to what we think 2021 will look like. So buckle up. You're in for a great chat. But first of all, let me get started by introducing who we have on this panel. Alex Keith is the CEO of P&G Beauty. She's the only female CEO of the top 5 beauty companies, and she leads, as we know at Glamour, one of the most valuable beauty businesses with a multi-billion-dollar portfolio of iconic brands that I'm sure you've used on your hair and your skin and your body, everything from Olay to SK2, Herbal Essence, and more. Alex has a degree in chemical engineering and joined P&G in 1989 as a supply manager before going on and ultimately leading P&G's overall global beauty business. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex.
Thank you, Sam.
We also have Kim Seymour, who's the Chief People Officer at WW, formerly known as Weight Watchers, where Kim leads the company's global strategy in all things human capital. She has a 20-year career working across some of the most well-known names in the US and globally as an executive at American Express and Home Depot and General Electric. Thank you so much for joining us, Kim.
Thanks for having me.
And blessed is he amongst women. We've got DeMaurice D. Smith, who's the executive director of the NFL Players Association. He's currently the longest serving executive director of a major sports union, as well as being one of the top 10 most influential executives in sports. Before that, he served as United States Attorney in the District of Columbia and as counsel to the Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder in the U.S. Department of Justice. Welcome to the chat, Dee.
Thank you, and blessed indeed. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And then finally, we've got Ellen Zentner, who's the Chief U.S. Economist and Managing Director at Morgan Stanley. She's been named to Bloomberg's Best list of top forecasters on the US economy, and she's got 20 years experience as a Fed watcher, a market-based economist. I can't wait to hear what is going to happen in 2021. And for anybody that follows economics closely, there's a coveted award called the Lawrence or Klein Award, and one of the best achievements in the field. And Ellen just won her second one recently. Thank you so much, Ellen, for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
What a great group. Well, I think a lot of people tuning in would like us to take a little bit of a moment of acknowledging how everybody worked very differently this year, and how this year was so unpredictable, unexpected, and how across all of your different industries, maybe some of the biggest lessons learned in looking back at the year that is 2020. Can I start with you, Alex? How did the beauty world change in 2020?
Well, for sure. I think I'd like to start actually first with, as I look back on the year, with our own employees at P&G Beauty and broader P&G. I think the commitment of our frontline workers in our manufacturing plants to serve our consumers all over the world, to find ways to work safely, and to really, make sure that the products that were so in demand were there on the shelves when our consumers were looking for them. I think as I think about the beauty industry itself and our business, certainly we saw tremendous swings in shopping habits. We probably all shopped more online, and we saw that happening around the world. We have a global business, and so we were able to benefit from seeing the changes in consumer habits first in China, of course, where this pandemic was, heated up first. And I think we were able to ready ourselves a bit for that change in habits to come to other markets as the pandemic spread around the world. I think probably through a consumer lens, one of the most intriguing things that this last year has brought to life is the real intersection of self-care and beauty. Because I think at the beginning of the pandemic and the lockdowns and working from home and all of those things, many of us thought that we could see a major slowdown in the industry. And certainly certain segments have probably had a harder time than others, but net, all of that has really shown us that a lot of the products that we sell are being used just as much, if not more, as people are staying home, because they have a really important self-care element to them that I think we thought was there, but didn't realize the importance of it as people are trying to keep themselves both, physically healthy, but certainly mentally healthy through these really challenging times.
Did you find watching the Glamour in consumer spending, where they were skincare, then let's say makeup, or more on home than fashion for outside of the home, more comfort? Did you see any significant changes in because you work, P&G works across so much of the beauty industry, that was it a good year for a certain part of it, like skin, or anything stood out for you there?
So we have seen some swings. I would say probably the biggest single impact on the business has been more tied to the travel retail industry shutdown that's come along with the travel industry shutdown, for lack of a better word, on our prestige skincare business, which I think the industry has faced, particularly in Asia. But the rest of our segments have been quite healthy. I mean, and we've seen more hair treatments, masks, skin treatments, and skin care. The Google searches for skincare have gone up tremendously over this time period, really just reflecting people, and particularly women's desire to care for themselves more during this time. So in conjunction with the growth in e-commerce, we've seen we've seen major shifts, particularly in our skincare business, into e-commerce.
That's so interesting. For a lot of us in the industries we worked in, there was the ability to work from home, work remotely, and we've all kind of leaned into that this year. Not necessarily something, Dee, that the NFL can do that. Talk to me about how, when everything changes, how you think of something that is ultimately such a live experience and make those changes quickly.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a contact sport, and we found ourselves trying to figure out how to bring our business back in an environment where it's basically a contact pandemic. So, right at the outset, our challenge within the union was, can we put our business back on in a frankly moral and ethical way, knowing that there are outbreaks in our community and going to be outbreaks among our players. So the challenge really boiled down to not so much, how quickly we can bring our business back, but can we do it in a way that doesn't injure our community and doesn't injure the players themselves? And to your point, staying at home isn't really an option. I know that we have a lot of football fans out there who really wanted the game back, but it was really refreshing to have a group of people who, I know are football players, but I look at them as somebody's husband, somebody's father, somebody's brother, having a group of people really sitting down and getting into a very difficult decision and discussion about how do we come back in a good way, in a positive way. So, we're about 55 days away from the end of the season. We've got a positivity rate that's staying somewhere between 1 and 1.5%, which is fantastic given where we are in the country right now. But, I'm thrilled to be a part of this panel, because what I'm hearing is a lot of people realize that they had to engage in a new way of thinking and in a new way of problem solving. And coming about new solutions in a pandemic where I think it would be safe to say none of us really signed up for this part of the job, right? But it's been thrilling. The games have been great, and it's been great to learn from a number of people sort of late in the stage of my career.
I love that. And I want to go back to that a little bit with Kim, because Dee, you talked about the people. Alex, you talked about the people in your industry. Kim, in your role at WW, you really are the intersection of like wellness and business structure and how those things come together. What were your biggest learnings from 2020, in particular when we're talking about the people we work with for or work for us?
For sure, how terribly resilient people are. I think when all of it, when everything happened, we took as our bellwether wellness of our employees, mentally, physically, even financially, and kept that as the bellwether. And we needed to move our business online in 6 days. As you probably know, a lot of our business has to do with face-to-face, and it just was not possible. So making decisions based on the health and wellness of our people, we knew would have an effect on our financial results, but it was the right thing to do. And as a result, everyone together in the same direction without obstacles and egos. And we moved a 60-plus-year-old business online in 6 days, which is something that in normal times might have taken 6 years. So unpacking what the learnings were, what were the behaviors, what were the lack of obstacles that allowed that to happen, and pulling those through forevermore is one of the things that we think is really important. Another thing that was important was recognizing that our sense of community as a company is part of our secret sauce. And figuring out how to replicate that, how to keep that, how to use that to get people through was really important, not just for our employees, but for our members. Because for a lot of people, the WW workshops that they went to was a cornerstone of their interaction, their personal lives, their social lives, and that went away instantaneously. So figuring out how to replicate that and provide that service turned out to be something that people really needed mentally, emotionally, not just physically based on the quarantine 15.
I love that. And Kim, I think the interesting thing that you brought up there, which touches on something that Alex brought up earlier, is the kind of how fast forward some companies had to be about putting their companies online, e-commerce, changing the way they do retail with changing the way they have a bubble and do business. Ellen, what else have you seen 2020 do in terms of fast forward companies thinking around things that are important for their future?
So I think that, similar to some of the other thoughts you've heard here, I mean, I was just floored at how quick a response we saw in an industry like finance that is so heavy client facing, how quickly we were able to take that all to a work from home environment and how quickly our clients embraced that. I also think there was an incredible amount of stress on HR departments at the time that, as Kim noted, sent HR into overtime. And the amount of hand-holding that we were able to receive at the management level on not only how do you keep from losing connectivity with your own teams, but how do you recognize that the experience of COVID is quite different for everyone. Because in the very beginning, when we were all sent home to start working from there, you didn't always see a lot of folks with a lot of sensitivity around understanding that while going to work from home might be really wonderful, there are lots of people out there that didn't even have that option and that were without a job. So be sensitive when you rah-rah about your own experience and how wonderful it might be. Also recognizing that the experience for young single folks in the company is very different than the experience of folks, employees with small children at home or school-age children that had to be homeschooled, the outsized burden that placed on the women within the company as well. And just understanding that everyone's experience was different. And so I can tell you that I've never felt closer to a lot of my colleagues during this time when I've not even been able to see them. And that's something that is a silver lining, if you will, out of COVID that I hope that we're able to carry forward even after we return to work and to what a new normal might look like.
And you touched on a lot there, Ellen, including, I think it's interesting that, new way of working. I know for me as a manager, one of the most helpful things this year has been like office hours, just phoning somebody up, not a Zoom call about a certain story, and just be like, how are you doing? How's your situation? Because as you said, everybody is having different situations at home. Everyone's dealing with different challenges, whether, their work from home situation, whether they are able to work from home. And you touched on women being adversely affected, something I'm super interested in particular, in the American workplace from home. Who else do you think took a lot of the burden this year in terms of what happened economically and in industries for 2020, Ellen?
Well, I think anyone connected with the services industry, I mean, the unemployment rates tend to be higher already for those in the low wage paying service sector areas of the economy. Women, minorities, young people make up a disproportionate share of those jobs. And so they have been hardest hit during COVID. And one of the most disappointing things is that, we went into COVID with a 3.5% unemployment rate. That was the national average. It was higher for those groups, but still some of the lowest unemployment rates that we had seen in a very long time. And to lose that has just been heartbreaking. And it's one reason why when we think about, as economists, how healthy the labor market is today. We've seen that the unemployment rate has come down quite sharply, even though it's still elevated, because we're bringing people back to work. If you just take a moment to look under the hood, you can see that there is a huge divergence between the experience of the folks attached to the labor force, because you've got unemployment rates that are still much, much higher for many underserved groups in the U.S. And it's one reason why I think that even though we've seen significant economic reparation since we've come out of lockdown earlier this year, I think there's still a very strong need for further fiscal support, something that I know that Congress is still wrangling over, but a serious need for further fiscal support until we get out from under the cloud of COVID, so that a lot of
I want to get back to that actually towards the end of the chat as well, because I think there's a lot of forward-facing questions I've got for you, Alex, back to you, in particular when we're talking about global companies and how they've changed the way they work this year. I've talked to a lot of people that, the expectation that you have to get on a flight for a meeting has changed. The flexibility from some of the people that have been so into people going into the office, being in the office community, there seems like there's been a global shift on where the flexibility for working from home is, even when we are in a situation where we can all work in an office again. What are you seeing as somebody that's running a global team, the differences that this year will make for the next decade or so in the way we work?
Well, I don't know that I know the answer for sure. What I can tell you is I think we will emerge with differing ways to work. And I think we, at least the way we've been talking about it internally, there is a value in being together. When you're a company that is about innovation and creativity and those type of things, there's a benefit to the more casual kind of discussions that can happen. I mean, we don't have a lot of casual discussions anymore because everything has to be scheduled. I mean, the office hours example you gave is probably one exception, but at the same time, I think we have learned that there's a flexibility for people to be able to work from home, especially for women or people balancing things in their house. So I think we'll come out of it in a changed approach, but I don't think it will be an absolute one or the other. And I really think ultimately having some individual aspect to it, because that's what's really helped through this, through these lockdowns is leaders talking to their direct reports individually to understand what each of them need, what each of them are going through. Everybody is dealing with different challenges with working from home or whatever they're trying to deal with in their lives in addition. So I think there'll be an individual aspect to it, and I hope the agility we've all learned and the flexibility we've all learned, we can continue on with to allow for those flexible models as we go forward.
Thanks, Alex. Dee, I want to go back to you. I want you to take us in, because I think people are fascinated. Take us into the war room when you're making those decisions to completely change the way that you do business, to implement the bubble, to get the events back up and running. Can you talk us through, can you take us behind the curtain and give us some insight to what that decision-making process was like for you?
Well, we pride ourselves on the union side of this, of really doing a lot of the things that a lot of you've already talked about, making very tough evidence-based decisions very quickly, because literally you're facing sort of an existential moment. The comment about taking your entire business online in days instead of years became the challenge in football. I think the only thing I would add to it, it is a sport or slash a business where let's just say that most NFL coaches aren't used to change. That's probably the nicest thing I'll say about an NFL coach here. But, being confronted with a necessity of doing things differently, or we're not going to be able to do any of this at all, was really the challenge behind closed doors. And some of those conversations, I would say, with the National Football League, most of those conversations were ones where once we got to an evidence-based rationale for making a change, They went along, for the most part, pretty well. But again, all of us deal with a people business, and when people get used to doing things their way, certainly when someone can simply say, well, that's not the way we do things in football. Well, this is the way we're going to have to do things in a pandemic. And so the conversation became, far less binary than the conversations we've had in the past, because people, I think, realized very quickly that if we can't move meetings outside, if we can't eliminate our off-season training regimen, if we can't separate players from each other, if we can't create virtual bubbles, it's not going to be a question of how much we impact football in the way we've done football in the past. It's going to be really a decision of, is this business going to be something that we're going to be able to do in 2020 heading into 2021? So, there were a lot of tough conversations, but we were really blessed to have a number of really good people. I leaned on our chief operating officer, a woman named Terry Smith, with the challenge of how do we take a union that is used to doing its business face-to-face with players? How do we change this into a virtual operation literally in a matter of days, because the option of not doing it was really untenable?
And did you reach out to other sports executives globally in the US? Were you getting advice from other people that had gone through similar things in the US or internationally?
Oh, absolutely. I've become, I think, very adept at taking all of the good ideas that I see from other people, stealing them and making them mine. So, Michelle Roberts is my counterpart over at the NBA Players Association. Tony Clark is my counterpart with Major League Baseball. I had the opportunity of watching them try to adjust on the fly when their respective businesses shut down. And everything that we've talked about so far today really has been in practice of what we've all heard before, that sometimes necessity is the mother of invention. It became a necessity for the NBA to shut down. It became a necessity for Major League Baseball to shut down. And learning from the trials and tribulations that they had gone through really armed us with a challenge and a necessity of coming up with a different way of conducting sports, and then presenting that sports to a public in a way in which we've never had to do before. And I'm thankful to have not only really top flight executives in other sports who helped us, but at a time like that, really good friends.
I want to come back to you because I want to figure out how sports fans are feeling about 2021 in a little while. But before I do that, I'd love to go to Kim, especially with her People First hat on. What are you hearing as people are ending, employees and people in the industry are ending in a challenging year as they're looking ahead to 2021? What's the sense? Are they very hopeful about what return to work looks like in the vaccinated era? What are you hearing?
So much. We have been continually pulse-checking our employees, and 85% of them have said, even with the advent of a vaccine, they are not interested in what I'll say coming back 100% of the time. So it's similar to what some of the other panelists were saying. So we are approaching this with a remote first point of view, probably forevermore. We've kicked the can down the road one more time till around June timeframe. That's just because we want to see how the science plays out. We want to see the effectiveness of the vaccine. We want to see the rate of the effectiveness. And then we want to, again, pulse check our people and think, how are you feeling about coming back in? Because the truth of the matter is, operationally, we never have to come back in. But what we are going to figure out is, how do we, sorry, that's my mother. How do she's worried about her baby girl. How do we make it so that we are intentional about the reasons we come back into the office? So some kind of hybrid model of day-to-day and regular meetings, we have shown ourselves to be extremely effective at home. But when we need to collaborate, when we need to be creative, when we need to team build. Those are the reasons that we would come together. So we have a whole cross-functional team thinking through the details of that, because it's not as simple as just saying that's what we're going to do. There are tax implications. There are replicating. How do you teach people how to lead in this environment? How do you teach people how to be led in these environments? What about your parents with small children? What about your people with their aging parents at home with them? There are so many constituencies and concerns to make sure that we have an answer for, in order to make sure that people can still be effective and can contribute at their highest level, even in this environment. So we am hiring someone actually to help us think that through.
One of the groups that we've been talking to a lot at Glamour, and something I've been thinking about this year, is the people that are the new graduates, the people that are starting careers. It's a very strange time to be hired and onboarded and interviewed. What's your advice to them? And some of them may be tuning in today for the future of working well. What in this very strange time to go out and seek out and move up in your career? What's the best advice for somebody going through that at the moment?
Now more than ever, I think people are so generous with their time in terms of role modeling and mentoring. I have never in the past been a big favor of the effectiveness of forced mentoring. But in this environment, we are intentionally making connections between more junior people and more tenured people. We are creating mentor circles around them. We are, for lack of a better word, pairing them up with a buddy or two, so that they feel like they have somewhere to go for information, for outreach, for the lay of the land. And then we are crafting, a curriculum, of what it really means to succeed from a career standpoint, and trying to replicate all of those things that we would do in person as much as possible. And one of those things are putting the onus on them to be more bold in their reach outs, teaching them the art of reaching out to someone that you don't know, that might have being a part of the business that you're interested in. How do you start that conversation? And how do you keep that relationship going? These are all things that can be replicated to a certain degree, because like Alex, I believe that there is no substitute for human interaction and being able to see someone put these skills into practice. But once we acknowledge that right up front, the replications and the resources that we provide for people, they've got to be intentional, they've got to be helpful, and they've got to be continuous. And we're going to continue to do that.
Thank you so much. Ellen, what's the crystal ball? What do we think work will look like? What do the economists think that work will look like, and how it will change, especially in the next 12 to 18 months going into the new year?
Yeah, so I think that, similar to what Kim laid out, we think that work from home will come down from these elevated levels during COVID, but still remain higher than previously. And so what does that mean? That's where we get most of our lasting impacts when you think about COVID's long-term effect on the economy, because if you're going to have more folks working from home with some sort of flexible arrangement, we know that from spending patterns, when we work from home, we spend more like when we're in retirement. Because we have such a wealth of data on how we spend in retirement, we're able to anticipate what spending patterns will be like in the economy, sector by sector going forward. And some of it's, just like you would expect, right? Less on transportation if we're commuting, spending less time commuting. The types of apparel we buy will shift. We'll spend more on food at home than food away from home. And so, I think that from what I've seen and from what Kim described, I think companies have embraced what will likely be a fact, that there's going to be more flexible arrangements going forward. And we've certainly spent the money. The companies that you've heard from today have spent the time and money to get us transitioned to be able to work from home. And so we'll already have that at our disposal to make great use of it going forward.
Are we seeing any predictions of decentralized, out of very, very dense urban areas like New York for companies? Is that on the table? What else are you seeing in terms of newer startups and businesses coming in and starting? Are they not looking at corporate spaces as an expense in the first couple of years?
Yeah, so I think, we're definitely, just like with any deep downturn, we're going to end up with a lot of commercial space vacancy rates that are going to take some time to work off. I think for some companies right off the bat, when we went into lockdown around COVID, said, look, we're likely going to need less space going forward. And some of that's just a function if you're going to have a greater share of your workforce having some work from home arrangements, you won't need as much office space. But there are also some other ways to think about it. If you're going to have a more spaced out work environment going forward, just for safety and business continuity reasons, well, then you can certainly have fewer folks in the office, but take up the same amount of square footage. Certainly, we've seen some interesting dynamics among small businesses. I would imagine that the business startups that we've seen already during COVID, not really the time you would think you would see startups, but we've seen a lot of employees that are contract labor that have decided this is a good time, as downturns often are, to try to start your own business. And you're going to have a much greater opportunity to do that out of your own home than seeking space outside of the home to do that. So I think the jury is still out on just how bad of a drop we'll see in commercial real estate, because I think some of our knee-jerk reaction in the beginning may have been overdone.
Thank you. Thanks, Ellen. And just as a reminder for everybody that's watching, I know we have the capability to do Q&As, and I think they'll be fed through to me. So please, if you have any pressing questions for this very exciting panel with these industry leaders, please send them through and we will try to get to them before the end of the chat. Alex, when you look ahead with a P&G for 2021, what are you most excited about?
Well, I think we have learned some amazing skills that I think we can bring to bear as 2021, hopefully vaccines start to permeate our markets. We start to see the cloud, someone mentioned the cloud of COVID. So the cloud of COVID lifting. And, but I really see in our employees a resilience that is amazing, and a energy and an enthusiasm to carry forward the creativity, the agility, the things they learned. I don't have as concrete an example as putting our entire business online in 6 days, but we did equally amazing things within our different brands and plants and businesses. And I'm already seeing people talking about how do we institutionalize these things so that as we come through 2021 and we look to serve our consumers even better, the cloud of COVID lifts, we can do that in faster and more impactful ways. So I'm pretty excited to see what the combined creativity and capacity of our organization will be once the cloud starts to thin.
And talking about the cloud lifting, Dee, are you hearing from sports fans that they are hungry to get back into a stadium to cheer on their? Are they still a little bit reluctant? What are you hearing from the fans?
They fall, I think, along the spectrum. I think you have a number of people who certainly would want to be back in a stadium very quickly. I think there is an overall hesitance right now just to see which way and how quickly that can happen. I don't expect to have a huge change in fan attendance before the end of our season. One of the challenges for certainly the other sports, basketball, baseball, hockey, whose revenue systems are more reliant on in-fan experiences. I think it'll be interesting to see after the first quarter of next year whether there is an increase in fan attendance, and a lot of that might depend upon the availability and the frequency with which the public takes the vaccine. But look, it has definitely changed the economic structure of our business. And I think that it will have probably a 2 or a 3 year run on our business. We've been more fortunate than, for example, college football and getting our games off and decreasing the number of positive tests. So, the challenge is going to be the extent to which really our communities respond on the issue of public safety, and that will have an impact on our business going forward.
Kim, what are you excited about for 2021 in terms of the changes we've made from 2020 as you look ahead to the year ahead in WW?
We have so many exciting things in line. And like I said, I think it was galvanized by this time. I mean, by no means would I ever want to go through a year like we just went through, for sure. But if I focus on the positive, some of that is the team pulling together and the thinking that has come out of that, and the things that we've been able to accomplish just by kind of thinking in a loon shot way rather than in a legacy or more traditional way. I also think the focus that people have, and for instance, I've done my part for P&G Beauty, let me tell you, but the focus that people have on wellness holistically I hope that continues, because it's not just a weight thing, which of course we're experts in. Wellness means mentally and emotionally and all of the ways. So getting down to if we're having an existential conversation with ourselves around what is really important to us, it's got to be some element of keeping this newfound revelation about what is truly important, and how we focus on making sure that those are the priorities in our lives. And that's whether it's our careers, because I think there is a place for that for sure, but the healthy place that it should have in your life, paying attention to your health, which I think has really elevated in this environment. As a two-time cancer survivor myself, I try to implore that people, wellness is not just about COVID. It's about all of these other ways that you need to make sure that you are keeping on top of chronic diseases that you have or whatever is going on with you physically. So I hope that this kind of relaxing of the shoulders a little bit that I've seen in some people continues through this year. So you can focus on what's really important and not some of the things that aren't.
Kim, I'm going to stay with you because Mike White is asking, most tech companies have a work from home policy, right? So especially if you're in the startup world, do you think the standard work from home policy is needed for all industries, all workers?
You know what? I'm going to say no. I think that I will tell you how I think about this at our world. There are some jobs that lend themselves to that. And it is a calculus of, is the role effectively done that way? And is the person one that can be effective working in that way? I think that continues as part of the decision-making matrix. However, I am much tougher on leaders who try to tell me that it doesn't work, because we have now proven in many, many months that it can. So the onus now is on the leader to tell me that it can't work, and not on the employee to prove to me that it can, if that makes sense. So I do think that companies are going to have a hard time mandating that 100% of your workforce is 100% in the office 100% of the time. I think that's a difficult case to make. And from an employee engagement perspective, you might want to think about whether or not it's required and why is it. I think because we've been so focused on giving people the tools they need to be effective in this environment, our engagement scores that I thought, frankly, were going to tank rose. And I think the more that companies focus on why wouldn't you, rather than why would we, I think that they'll see more engaged employees.
I think that leads us into a question that a lot of people are asking that are tuning in, and it's about company culture, right? And we touched on it in a little bit during this chat, but how, as leaders, do you help the culture stay, even though the way we're working is very different? And I know that has been personally a challenge for me. I think, one thing that I did 6 months in was just to acknowledge with all my team, sent them a gift basket of like, you're all working from home. And, it was something small, but really well received, because usually we'd be in the office with each other. We'd be, somebody would get gifts or birthdays or whatever. None of that was happening. Alex, what have you been doing in terms of keeping up the company culture for those people that are in very different situations?
Yeah, I think there's been a myriad of things, but the things that I think have been the most powerful, we did a series of leadership videos regularly to stay in touch with our global organization. Call it 4 or 5 minutes once a week. I would do one week, and our president of Skin and Personal Care would do one the next week, and we would take turns. And what was so interesting to me about that was, of course, we were in lockdown, so I was filming from my home. And one of the ones that I did, I talked about how I had made the wonderful decision of having my kitchen renovated, and they did all the demolition, and then the lockdown happened. So I lived through the lockdown with basically like a plug-in burner to cook food on, and it was like camping in my own house. And that video, I think, when you're in an office together, people can see you as a human being and as somebody who's accessible. They see you, at the coffee machine or wherever. But when we're all at home and people can only see you on a video screen, I think that does take away that part of the culture. So showing that vulnerability, the number of notes I got saying, that was amazing. Are you really cooking on that thing? And, and the answer was yes, I actually was. So I think that was a big part of it. And now that not everybody is always at home, we've kind of stopped those regular videos, but we're doing a lot of communication and some, smaller kind of group chats, and just to stay in touch. But I have found that showing vulnerability as a leader has become infinitely more important and infinitely more impactful during this virtual work environment, because it just helps people feel closer to their leadership.
I couldn't agree with you more, Alex. I think you're right on the money with that one. I think, just being open and honest about what's going on in your lives with your team is so helpful. Dee, have you noticed, what have you been doing to keep the culture up in your in these different times with your team?
I think two things that people have already said. This is a humbling experience for any leaders who are used to being in control and dictating the course of outcome. So first, the point about becoming and exhibiting far more vulnerability as a leader, I think has been an important message to our membership. Having a worldwide shutdown is something where, you simply throw up your hands and everybody said it before, we're in a worldwide pandemic. So showing that, I think, has been incredibly important. Also for me, really leaning on the talent of that second, third, and fourth level of staff leadership. I typically hit all 32 teams, visit all 32 teams during the first 6 weeks of the season. I will say that I did not miss visiting all 32 teams in 6 weeks. My body feels a whole lot better, but someone had to go do it. So relying on that core team of individuals to really replace my presence in those meetings had two effects. One, it demonstrated that we have a great staff. And two, it also demonstrated how important it is to continue that connectivity to the people who are relying on us as a union. And being forced to do that as a leader, I think at the end of the day is going to make all of us a lot stronger. It might nearly kill us, but it's certainly going to make us a lot stronger because all of us have had to do things that we thought we'd never be asked to do.
Ellen, are you seeing that? Are you seeing very different management styles across industries in dealing with culture this year?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is similar to what the panel has spoken to. I mean, on my own team, as Alex noted, I've let them see my vulnerability. When they saw me every day in the office, I was dressed to the nines, ready to chew nails and spit steel. And Instead, they've seen that there are days when I don't necessarily get out of my pajamas if I have no face-to-face. And I let them see that, your boss actually looks like a real person when she's not, having to see clients that day. And it made them feel more comfortable. And then it made them understand that we can, rather than texting each other or emailing each other or being on chats through the office computer, why not just Zoom each other, even if it's a simple question, just so we can see each other each day. I think what's also really important is that a lot of these examples are coming from the top. So Alex is the CEO. Our own CEO, James Gorman, a lot of these examples of how you should conduct yourself and help your team during COVID has come from the top. And that's critical. It's critical because it lets you know it's okay. And those messages have to come down from the top. And so for me, in terms of the culture, reminding employees on an almost daily basis of what the firm has been doing that is in line with some of those pillars of culture that we have, with real examples of what the firm has been doing during COVID in terms of giving back to the community and focusing on diversity and inclusion. Having those examples to show that we've not lost our culture, we know exactly who we are and what we're about. And getting those examples as often as possible, I think, has been really critical during this time.
Thanks, Ellen. Kim, we've got people asking whether there's going to be changes ultimately in different industries for policies around sick days and leaves. Will that change in the workplace going forward? And also a couple of questions coming in around, will there be less discrimination for familial responsibility for employees, in particular where women are taking on some of the primary caretaking roles? What are your thoughts on those two things, which are obviously front and center of a lot of people's minds?
Well, here on leaves, I think that's even, or I'll call it paid time off, whatever that is. I think that is going to have to evolve to a more, most people are working from home after a pandemic, we're going to have to trust employees more. And the industry trend toward a more, dare I call it, unlimited PTO type program, I think you'll see get more lift in more places. This idea of here's a minimum number of days you have to take, which is frankly what I'm saying right now, rather than a maximum. And as you can tell, that's a different conversation that you're having, because we're trying to guard against burnout, workload, people in this particular moment feeling like, well, there's nowhere for me to go. Yeah, true, but you can go away from this. Is what we're telling people. The other one was about familial
responsibilities for employees. Let me get up the question. Do you believe there is less discrimination for familial responsibilities for employees? Has this been better or worse with COVID? And sometimes males are also the primary caretakers, and having children can be seen as a benefit versus a burden.
I have seen, all I can talk about is in that realm is what I've seen with me and with my colleagues or my support group of other CHROs. And it seems to have had a positive effect. And this is what I mean. Now, when you see the fact that, children are coming into the viewpoint, or your mother is calling on the phone because whatever reason, or the dog is coming through, humanizing people in such a way that, and and you feel for them when you know that they are trying to be chief educator and still show up for work and all of this. And all of us have had to kind of accept this idea that why does it matter how they're getting that work done? Why does it matter what 9 to 5 does not work for everyone? Why do you care whether or not they are having to say, look, for these 2 days, I can't work because I am going to be focused on the education or the replication of PE, whatever it is, for my kids. And as long as you are focused on the outcome, what difference does it make? There seems to be much more tolerance, acceptance, flexibility to accommodate things of that nature. And I'll be honest, it was more of a struggle before, where everyone felt like the person had to accommodate and flex to what the company need, rather than the company having to figure out how to flex to what that employee needed. Now, to me, it's still a matter of is this employee someone that is good at what they do and has been contributing member and do it at a high level? Why would you care how they do that? And why wouldn't we be as accommodating as we can to ensure that they feel like they can have some integration of their work and their home lives? Otherwise, you lose a good employee. I feel like that conversation is so much easier to have now than it was even a year ago. That's just our perspective.
I agree. I think so too. And even just, what you talk about being on Zoom and seeing your team coming in with like kids, and there's homeschooling and there's all of the, you're getting an insight into the people that you work with. Finally, I'm going to ask you all the same question. I'm going to go around to you, but what are you most excited and hopeful for in the working world in 2020? I'll start with you, Alex.
Well, I really am most hopeful that the skills and the things that people have learned through this, the resilience is probably top, but the empathy, the creativity, the agility, the flexibility, that we're able to carry those forward, that we find a way to value the things we've learned, the lessons we've learned, and build them for a better future for work and for the people that do it.
Thank you so much. Dee, what about you? What are you most hopeful, excited for 2021 in the working world?
I would say the hope is that we continue this effort of empathy, that we've seen new ways of thinking about people, sharing what someone said earlier, realizing and recognizing the humanity that goes into the people who do our work. That's what I'm most hopeful for.
Thank you. Ellen, what about you? What's giving you smiles thinking about 2021?
So when I think about our labor market and the wave that we worked before COVID, it never really quite worked well for millennials. And it's not working quite well for Gen Z, the young folks that come up behind millennials. And millennials have been trying to change the nature of work during their time in the labor market. And I think COVID has just quickened that, where work will now look more like what makes sense to millennials and Gen Z who wanted that better balance, life-work balance than what we were affording them before this.
Thanks, Ellen. And finally, Kim, what do you think? What are you most excited about for 2021?
The card-carrying introvert in me cannot believe I'm saying this, but I cannot wait to see my team. I can't wait to see the WW team. I can't wait to, and yes, it'll look different and it'll feel different, and that's okay. But the times when we do come together, I think are going to be impactful. I think they have to be intentional, and I think they will be even more effective than they ever have been before. But most of all, our sense of community that has made us successful. I need, and I think our employees need some element of that, and so I can't wait for that.
Thank you so much, Kim, Alex, Dee, Ellen. Thank you so much for your insights and such a fascinating conversation. I could have talked to you all evening, and thank you for everybody that sent in their questions as well. And we're going to go back to Heidi.
Thank you, Sam. I really enjoyed, and I'm sure everyone did, the engaging conversation, and certainly, as well as being informative, it was one we could all very well relate to. Another outcome of 2020 is an increase in our stress levels. And sometimes it's just best to take a moment to recenter. So we will. We have an expert on hand who will lead a quick meditation exercise before we jump into our final interview.
Hi, I'm Susie Alaf Schwartz, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Unplug Meditation app. And I'm so excited to be a part of the future of working well. Now, today, I'm going to possibly share with you the best meditation that you will ever learn. It literally helps you stop stress in 16 seconds. But before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about meditation and why we should even do it. A lot of people think that they can't meditate because they think too much. They can't clear their minds. And the truth is that you will never be able to clear your mind because you have 50 to 80,000 thoughts every single day. That's about a thought a second. So there's only 3 things that happen in every meditation. Number 1 is we pick a place of awareness. Today we'll be doing our breath. Number 2 is we let it go and we just experience the present moment, the sweet spot. And then 3, our mind starts wandering. And then we just bring it back like a bicep curl. Awareness, let it go, mind wanders, bring it back. That's it. Why should we do this? Well, because at the age of 25, your brain is at peak and it slowly starts to decline after that. Your focus, your memory, your executive decision-making, and your compassion. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can change the physical structure of your brain. In fact, Harvard neuroscientist Sarah Lazar did a study, and you can watch her TED Talk, where she shows the before and after MRIs of the brain from people who had never meditated before, who were 50 years old, to after what it looked like when they did an 8-week program. So please, I highly recommend watching that. So how about we stop stress? The key is I'm going to have to first give you a little bit of stress so you can feel it work for yourself. It's only called a 16-second breath or the box breath. But you don't have to worry about that because I'm going to guide you through the experience. So let's begin by closing our eyes. And just imagine that you are going to start a meeting on Zoom, but you can't get through because the Wi-Fi is not working. Yes, that stressful feeling of the important meeting, but the Wi-Fi doesn't work. All right. Now that you feel stressed, I'd like you to breathe in through your nose for the count of 4, 2, 3, 4, and hold your breath for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Audible exhale out for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. One more time. Breathe in for 4. Hold your breath for 4. Audible exhale out for 4. Let's hear it. And hold. 2, 3, 4. And open your eyes. Hopefully you were not thinking about that stressful thought when we were counting and breathing at the same time. It's hard to do all 3. So what's important about that is that it not only sends a signal to your brain that everything's okay, even when it's not, but it also helps you pause your stress so that you can relax yourself and respond. Because when you don't do that, usually you react and nothing good happens when you do that. So I hope you enjoyed this 16-second meditation. And if you want more, you can check out the Unplug meditation app.
I'm Carlotta Jacobson, president of CEW and founder of Cancer and Careers. Today's conversation would not be complete without including an example of a company known for its philanthropy, putting customers first, and serving the public good, L'Oreal. It's been recognized as one of the world's most ethical companies 11 times and counting. Carol Hamilton, Group President of Acquisitions, helps bring L'Oreal's vision and charitable giving to life. Her 36-year tenure includes shaping L'Oreal's flagship brand from a small company in the 80s to a global beauty icon it is today. Throughout her career, Carol has spearheaded and championed causes that better people's lives, including cancer and careers. Leading the discussion is Jenny B. Fine, the executive editor, Beauty of Women's Wear and Beauty Inc., and cancer survivor. Jenny was recently honored by CEW with the first ever Beauty Industry Champion Award for her storied career in journalism and her extensive body of work. I'm so proud to welcome Carol and Jenny.
Carlotta, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Hi, everybody, and hi, Carol.
Hi, Jenny. Hi, everybody. It's so good to be here with you. It's so great to see you, Jenny, and thank you, Carlotta.
Carol, I'm so excited to talk to you today about something that is so near and dear to both of us. And, you know, for the past hour, we've been looking at how business and health are so intertwined. And through its philanthropy, L'Oreal has always recognized that overlap. So I think I'd like to start by having you give us an overview of L'Oreal's philanthropic approach and the causes that the company champions.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. It's such a subject that is really near and dear to my heart. And I just want to put a little bit of context together because 20 years ago, I was working at L'Oreal on the L'Oreal brand, and I was so admirative of the beauty industry because the beauty industry between Revlon, Estee Lauder companies, and Avon had really made a huge progress in reducing the death sentence of the diagnosis of breast cancer. And I was so admirative that the beauty business had come together to make such a difference. And yet L'Oreal at that time was a little bit behind. And fast forward now, I'm so proud that L'Oreal really puts philanthropy very deep at its heart and soul. And we have made philanthropy one of our key reasons for existence, to really make women's and men's lives better on so many different levels. So today, we really believe that philanthropy is critical for employee engagement. And we have two major platforms. The first is a US creative platform last year called L'Oreal Gives Back. It really provides a way for our employees to become much more engaged in their philanthropic efforts, both with their brands, but also with their own personal philanthropies that they want to commit to. So there's three axes to this. We sponsor time. Last week was a virtual week where 300 of our employees gave time to 25 different charities. We do that live usually every year, but this year we did it virtually. So I thought it was amazing that 300 employees actually served 25 charities, which was incredible. And in 2019, there were 20,000 hours of service given across the US by our employees. So that's really, really important. The second is, of course, donating to causes to really make a difference. And I'm very proud that L'Oreal matches every single donation. So that's really a step forward. And then lastly, we give so many products to really help women and men in need across the globe. So those are kind of the way we give back. That's the US initiative. And there are 6 streams that we focus on from a company. Environment is one of our major initiatives. L'Oreal is really leading in sustainability, and it's a huge part of our mission. Diversity and inclusion, women and children, disaster relief, supporting communities in which we work, and then wellness through beauty. In COVID, I'm very proud to say that we have delivered 3 million hand sanitizers produced in our plants, 12,000 gallons of hand sanitizers to hospitals, and 6 million products of high need beauty products to women and men in need around the globe. So that's really our platform in the US and some examples of what we've done. And then L'Oreal announced this year in June an extension of our Sharing Beauty with All with a new program called L'Oreal for the Future, which increases our commitment to climate change and to the planet in terms of sustainability, and also to women and giving them funding when they need it most in their lives. So there's a $150 million impact investing fund that L'Oreal has committed to this year. And I think it's just an incredible example of how the leading beauty company can really make a big difference in the world. And then
Carol,
sorry.
Yeah, I hear those numbers and they're just stunning. Why is it so important, do you think? Obviously it's the right thing to do, but why is it so important as well from a cultural point of view and from an internal point of view?
I'm so glad you asked, because for me, the brands, when they contribute to a philanthropic cause, whether it's their own personally or the one that their brand has decided to embrace, the engagement that our employees feel and the love that they have for L'Oreal values is increased so strongly. And we've seen that build year on year as our philanthropy has built and given back. every time we engage with a new philanthropic cause, our employees are so proud. They want to write a check, but then over time, they personally become involved in visiting centers that deal with that issue. And they galvanize groups together to really understand in depth what that philanthropic cause is. So I can't think of any better way for a company to increase cultural engagement than through philanthropy and purpose associated with their brands.
And I think, you've told us about so many amazing initiatives that the company is involved with, but you've also been so integral to the development of Cancer and Careers. Can you tell us about L'Oreal's involvement with CAC?
Sure. I still remember the day that Carlotta shared this idea. It was the beginning of an idea. I was so excited. I can't believe that it's now almost 20 years. And I just signed on immediately on behalf of L'Oreal. I was fortunate that Carlotta called me so I could be the one who signed on. But we have been dedicated to Cancer and Careers for 20 years. I believe the total amount of dollars that we've contributed to the cause is around $450,000 over the years. And we've also done quite a few awareness building programs because we think it's important not only that it exists, but more and more women know about it and how to access this incredible service, which is unique and so powerful for women going through this scary and lonely time.
I mean, I am firsthand testament to that. It was my first stop because you do wonder what is going to happen and what are the ramifications and the repercussions on your job.
Exactly. And I really believe that CEW has played a major role in enabling women to deal with cancer and to continue to work. And if you think back 20 years, you really went through this very lonely, isolated stage. And now with this support, women are able to discuss it with more people, to treat it as just a time in their life that will end happily and due to these kind of services that CEW provides. So I think that over these 20 years, the amount of impact that CEW has made has been tremendous.
When you think about impact moving forward, what advice do you have for the next generation of entrepreneurs and philanthropists?
Get involved. So many people ask me, how do I get involved? How do I choose a cause? What should I do? And I said, don't think through too much, join a cause that you feel passionate about, that you want to support, that is not work but joy. And then that will give you happiness in your life, and it will gradually build over time your engagement. And if you don't find that happening with the first cause that you choose, then try another one, because ultimately you will find your perfect match. I also believe strongly to young philanthropists that they should stick with a cause if they like it, because you only can make an impact and understand a philanthropic cause if you spend the right time doing it.
And, when more and more we're seeing that this is so important to consumers also. Consumers are aware of the work that brands are doing. In your role, you meet with a lot of young founders and entrepreneurs. How do you see it developing? Obviously L'Oreal has scale on its side, but what if you're not as big as L'Oreal?
So I think honestly that any business will benefit from choosing a cause and being authentic about why they chose the cause. And again, really supporting it with meaning. So I think, it's as easy in a way as a young company to embrace a cause than a big company. It's really your approach to it and your consistency and the meaning that you bring to it that's going to make it successful and bring joy to your life.
And as we enter, hopefully, as the vaccine starts to spread and we think about a post-pandemic world, what feels different to you?
Oh, everything feels so different. I can't wait to really see my team, as Kim said on the past panel. I can't wait to be able to celebrate occasions, to exchange gifts, to hear stories, to not be on Zoom, honestly. I love not being on Zoom.
No offense taken.
Exactly, but I just really treasure the idea of going back to a new normal. But like the last panel said too, I hope that we cherish and treasure and maintain the empathy and kindness that we have developed for our fellow human beings during this incredible crisis. That's really what I hope.
And so my final question for you, you really have accomplished so much in this arena. And as you look back over the last 20 years, what makes you most proud?
I think bringing, so when in the mid 90s, as I said, I admired the beauty business. And so I brought philanthropy to L'Oreal. Being a French company, philanthropy was not a natural initiative at that time. And so to ask the company to support the Ovarian Cancer Research Fund, because I felt that there was so much support of the breast cancer initiative, that I thought that we should try and bring research and more knowledge about the ovarian cancer disease, and that was impacting so many women. So the fact that was initiated, let's say, I think it was in 1997. And then when we fast forward here and I see how philanthropic L'Oreal has become, I'm just really thankful that I was at the company at the time, that I could, bring some of this to L'Oreal. So I'm very, very proud of being a pioneer in the philanthropic space for our company.
Well, the impact that you've had is such an inspiration to all of us.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, congratulations, Carol. And it now gives me pleasure to turn it back over to Heidi Manheimer, the chairwoman of CEW's foundation.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Heidi.
And thank you both. I want to thank all of our speakers for sharing their insight, our sponsors for making it happen, and our attendees for joining this dynamic exchange. There's so much more to talk about, which is why I hope you will continue to follow the work of Cancer and Careers and the Future of Working Well initiative. So thank you, everybody. Wishing you great health and happiness for the holiday season and beyond.